Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. My name is Jennifer Hornsby, and I work in University Registrar Services, also known as the Registrar's Office. Um, let's get the show on the road. It's been a long day for everyone, hasn't it? Hope you're all having a good time. I am. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the student profile tables. Um, this was in the description of the session, but just so you're aware, this is not the student profile that is in the Salesforce, Enterprise Salesforce tool. This is a series of tables that get fed to both ODS and Data Warehouse for reporting. So today I'm going to tell you about the tables, why we built them, what we use them mostly for, a little bit about some of the logic that we get most questions about, talk about the snapshots at the end, and then I'll leave some time for questions. Has anyone in here used any of the student profile tables before for anything? Okay, good. And hopefully you'll have some questions that I'll be able to answer. Hopefully I'll be able to answer. All right, so the student profile tables. First, I wanted to share that there is documentation in ASU's Google Drive. It's been there for years. I keep it updated as much as I can. So if you go to ASU's Google Drive and bookmark it or favorite it or whatever you want to do, as things change, that's where I keep it all updated. This first document is a description of what student profile is. It gives you the details about how it's updated and when it stops being updated and becomes stale, both in PeopleSoft, ODS, and Data Warehouse. All of that is really important to understand when you're using those tables. The next document is a spreadsheet that was in the data dictionary 3 or 4 iterations of the data dictionary ago. These descriptions haven't really changed. We are starting to work on the new data dictionary. So once I have time to work on that, this might change the way it looks with whatever new attributes that data dictionary needs. But for now, it's just a Google Sheet. If you want to know how to find GPA, this is going to tell you what table, what column, all of that. It's not the sequel, but just so you know, there is another spreadsheet we maintain internally within my team, or well, there's a few others that have access to it, that does get into the sequel behind each of the fields. It's not complete, so I hesitate to publish it, but I know what's complete and what's not complete. So if you ask me a question, I usually can get that information. All right, so why did we create these student profile tables? In 2007, ASU implemented PeopleSoft to replace a homegrown legacy SIS system. With PeopleSoft, it gave us the ability to get a lot more data than we had before, and everything is effective dated. Effective dates are wonderful. They allow the user to control when something is effective. They can backdate, they can future date, they can do all sorts of things. But that makes the data a little more complicated. And what used to be a simple query to get a count of students by major, for example, or by college, ended up being 30, 40, 50 tables. And that was just too much for the average person at ASU to do every day. So we decided to replicate a student profile table that was in the legacy data warehouse in PeopleSoft. We built it in PeopleSoft. This is funny. I think it's funny. You might not be as interested because the resource that was available was a PeopleSoft developer and knew it could be done in PeopleSoft. Another reason was because the way we do the 21st day, 45th day, and 21st day of session B is we refresh a non-prod environment with production data as of midnight on the census date. And then we do 2 or 3 days of data analysis and cleanup using all the tools that we have in PeopleSoft, all the batch processes, all the things that we can do to get things clean quickly. And once we're done with all that cleanup, then we run the student profile process. And then that's what is the starting place for census. So there were a few reasons why we did it in PeopleSoft. Not glamorous, that's just where it is. So we also decided that if a query to count students by college, for example, needed 30 tables for one person to build, and then another person in another college needs to do the same thing, and they use just as many tables, but they pick one table different than the other person, for example, you might get different answers. And it was really important that we give everyone at the university a set of tables that is more likely to return consistent results no matter who is running the query. So we did it for simplifying the data and for consistent reporting. Some of the things that are in these tables that people use most often is the student's major. There's specific logic we use to identify the student's major regarding the effective date, the status, what plan code is primary, all of those things. We worked very closely with our colleagues in institutional analysis and enterprise technology, which I don't even think it was called UTO then. I don't know what it was called, but a whole bunch of people worked on it, decided on the logic, and we built the tables. So we get the major from these tables, we get the enrollment status, we get their residency status, whether they're paying Arizona tuition or out of state. This is where we identify new, returning, continuing, and first-year students. This table gets the term statistics, like hours and GPA, academic level, academic standing, and whether they applied to graduate or have been awarded already. There is a pre-built table in our analytics group, enrollment in records, that's just basically a dump of all the fields, all the columns in the two different sets of tables. Sometimes the exact pre-built report for something that someone wants, but you can get what you want from just running this table, downloading all the data and then filtering and analyzing it. There's two pre-built tables, one that's by term and one is the current student profile, and we'll get into that in a minute. This is just the example of the student profile by term. So these are the three tables I'll talk about today. The first two are term-based, student profile major by term, and then student profile by term. Both of those are term-based tables. S-term is a key in both of them. There is a different name for these tables in ODS and PeopleSoft and Data Warehouse. So that white, it's not a white paper, the Google document that I showed on one of the first slides lists the exact names in the different environments. The first table, student profile major by term, is a term-based table, but students can have multiple majors, careers, plans, subplans, certificates, minors. So students will have multiple records in that table per term with a flag for which one is primary. And it's the student's major as of the term start date, which is what we use for enrollment and census reporting. The second table is also by term, but there are no multiples. Each EMPL ID is in there once per S term. That table houses everything that wouldn't have a different value for a student who has different careers, programs, and plans. One example I like to say is the athlete flag. You're either an athlete or you're not. It doesn't matter if you're a grad and an undergrad student. So there's a bunch of flags in there. The third one is the student profile major current, and this table has no term-related data, so it does not contain enrollment status, GPA, anything like that. It's just the program plan data. And it's for all the records that are current as of the current day's date. instead of as of the term start. So it allows, it's used for a lot of operational reporting when an academic unit needs to know who's in my major right now. The student profile major current also does not include anyone who's no longer active. So if they graduated, they're not in the table anymore. So the two term-based tables only contain records for students who have been term activated. Does anyone know what term activation means? I'm going to have a presentation about it tomorrow if you want to learn more, but term activation is a requirement for a student to register for classes. We only term activate students that are admitted and active. There's a bunch of other exclusions, but term activation is the precursor to actually registering for classes. So future admits are not in these tables because we haven't term activated for those tables, those semesters yet. Everything else in the table is either tied directly by S term to the term, or it's using an effective date to pull as of the term start. Also, these tables only include undergrad, grad, and law. The global launch, also known as non-credit career, is not included. They have a completely different set of business rules and calendaring, and they're just not in the table. ASU is implementing a medical school within the next year. Has anyone heard of that? So over the next couple of months, we will be working with ET to integrate the medical school career into this table, feed it into all of the logic, all of the rules. Everything is going to be updated to include medical school, but it still will not include non-credit. We implemented it in 2009, and if you read the document that I keep referring to, that's in Google Docs, you'll understand it went live in 2009, and it updates the current and future terms every night when it runs, but it also goes back 5 years. And all of that gets loaded to the data warehouse, which is why now we're out this many years from implementing it. It starts in 2005 because that was the earliest term. Okay, so here is just a snapshot of one individual student's record with all of the fields in the student profile major by term table. This is all the stuff that you can see about a student in that one table. Again, these were data fields that we used to have to get from dozens of different tables. Okay, I briefly touched on the requirements for term activation, but just real quickly, when we term activate students, we do it on the 22nd day of the prior term. So we just did it September 11th, I think, was the 22nd day. And we term activated students that are admitted for next spring or for an earlier term. And their program plan is active as of the start of the spring semester. Before we do that, the reason we wait until this 22nd day is because we have to inactivate all the students who don't meet the enrollment requirements for their program, college, or campus. So I'll go into this tomorrow in the presentation I'm doing about the life cycle of a student, but there are continuous enrollment requirements for undergrad, grad, and law. And so on the 22nd day, we inactivate the students who don't meet that requirement, and then we term activate them, and then we term activate every night. So once we term activate, all of a sudden that term shows up in the student profile by term tables for the upcoming term. One of the things that I go to this table the most for is the enrollment status. So there is a field. I don't know if there's a cursor, but it's the ASU enroll status. In the example we're looking at here, it's an E. Anyone want to guess what E means? Enrolled, yes. Good job. And then what do you think W stands for? Withdrawn, good job. And D? Dropped. an N. Never, never. I've always wanted to add a fifth category, which is enrolled in orientation only for online students, but never gets on the priority list. The other fields highlighted on this slide are the other fields related to the enrollment. So the eligible to enroll flag, we don't really have time to get into today in 50 minutes, but the only reason that's the main reason you'll see that that's set to an N is if a student has applied to graduate for a term before that term, but after we already term activated them. So we go back and when they apply to graduate, we set that flag to N. And that stops them from registering. We have the date they first enrolled. If they have withdrawn, we have the withdrawal date and the reason. I also highlighted the academic load. What do you think F means? Full-time. Yes, thank you. Full-time. And then all of the statistics for the number of credit hours they have in that term and how many classes. So with these fields, I can find the students that are enrolled but are in nothing but ASU online, usually by limiting it to the enrolled status is E, the class count is 1, and the number of credit hours is 0. Every once in a while, there's a marching band student in there too, but usually it's the majority are the online orientation only. Here's some sample records from a couple dozen students, just showing the fields I just showed you. So the enrollment status you can see is the third column. You see D, E, D, E, N, W, N, and E. And when they enrolled, you see a first enrolled date. You'll see the date populated when they're dropped or withdrawn as well. The eligible to enroll flag is N. Mostly that's going to be someone who applied to graduate. You can see the academic load, the class count, all of the units. This is a sample of one student's record over many terms. So you can see they didn't enroll their first semester, they enrolled their second semester, they enrolled their third. You just see how that goes on. You can also see, oh, I don't have the CUME units on this slide. The table also has all the academic level information, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. It has the total cumulative units. These unit fields, the UNT and the TOT fields, come straight from student car term, which is the table directly in PeopleSoft. It's not a custom table. It stores all those statistics, as well as the CUR GPA and the CUME GPA. These are term statistics from a couple dozen students. Some have grades posted already, some don't. You can see some have a current GPA and some are still 0. And this is term statistics from one student over many terms. And what I like to show about this is you can see in the far right, this student jumped straight from a freshman to a junior. That usually happens for a new student when their transfer credit is posted to their second term instead of their first term, because they couldn't have earned that many credit hours. Well, it's not likely. People surprise me every day. You can also see the total cumulative units that aggregate. Goes from 0 to 79. Right next to that, you can see the transfer credit hours. So you see that in the fall of 2019, that student had 95 transfer credit hours posted, but 0 the term before that. Also, this student graduated and had their CUME stats reset, and you can see that about halfway down, now they're a post-bac undergraduate. The academic level is a 50, and the description of that is post-bac. Their CUME stats get reset in between bachelor's degrees, which means their GPA goes back to a 0, their credit hours go back to a 0, which means they didn't get all A's on their first degree. They have a second chance the second time around. This table also has the calculation of new returning continuing and whether they're a first-year student. This is the only place in PeopleSoft where this value is calculated. PeopleSoft is a transactional system, so students can change from being looking new to looking continuing any day of the week. The reason that would happen is if they register now for session B of fall, they might look like a continuing student now for next spring, whereas up until now, they look like a new student. So it's dynamic, it changes every day, it changes throughout the day. And then when we get to the 21st day, institutional analysis identifies the official first-year student and the NRC status. However, the logic that this table is using came from institutional analysis. It came with a lot of their input and testing and advice. We had to make a lot of decisions because the data is messy, especially for new incoming students. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And it's all we have leading up until the census. So here is the basic definition of who is a first year student. They are new and they're not non-degree. They're not standalone certificate and they're not a visiting scholar. Otherwise, they would have been new non-degree. And either their high school diploma is the same year as the year for fall. So today that would mean for fall of 24, the student graduated from high school in 2024. Or regardless of when they graduated, they completed fewer than 12 transfer credits before their first term at ASU. AP credits doesn't count, high school dual enrollment doesn't count. ASU credits taken through ASU prep don't count. Those are not transfer credits. It's just pure transfer credits that count. So if they have 12 or more and they didn't graduate from high school this year, they're not a first-year student. They're a new transfer. The next question is, what is new? NRC has been around since before I was here. In this table, instead of coding the codes NRC, for some reason, we decided to use the descriptions, and less than a year later, we stopped having undergraduate readmit as a category. Now we call them returning because of the quick reentry policy. But new means not here before at the same level as they are in this term, and in a fall or spring semester in a state-funded class. Readmit means they were here before, same level, but just not in the immediately preceding fall or spring term. And then continuing means they were here last semester, last fall or spring, same level, and they were in state-funded classes. Whoops, I skipped a slide. Which button goes back? Oh, thank you. Nope. One more, thank you. Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, so this has been the same logical diagram since we implemented standalone certificates a year or two ago. It's going to completely change by next year. By this time next year, I'll be presenting because the logic for medical school is going to completely change this. But basically, if the student's primary record in the current term is the same as the former term, and the student enrolled in that prior term, and the education level is the same. Education level means bachelor's, master's, doctoral, just as an example. That's what education level means. And they either are not a visiting scholar or they were not before, or they are now and they were before. And the enrollment in the prior term was state funded. And their prior term, that student's prior term is ASU's prior term. So for fall, that would be last spring of 24. Right now, we have this question, is student undergrad? If no, then the student is coded as new. What that means is right now for grad and law students, if they're not continuing, they're new again. There's a whole history about why, but when we implement the medical school, we're going to undo that and treat the grad students the same as undergrad. So they'll be able to be returning student. We will report them as returning students the same as we do undergrads. All right. All right, so here are the values in student profile that I look at when someone questions, why is this student new, returning, continuing, or why are they first year student? I think they should be a transfer, things like that. These are the relevant fields. You can see we have the education level, 13 is a bachelor's, 10 is associates. And then this is what the data looks like for a few dozen students. So the new undergrad status is only populated when it's an undergrad and they're new, otherwise it's a dash. And this is a single student. This is the student that did not enroll their first term. So in the fall, they're new again as a new transfer. Oh, sorry, new. It says freshman, but the label is now first year student. So on reports, my team manually, well, not manually, but we've coded it with SQL to display it as a first year student. This is all the different data in the table that is related to a student's major. We have everything. We have the plan, the subplan, the sequence, the catalog year, the college it belongs to, the org that owns that plan code, all of that. It's all here. So I mentioned effective dates before. For undergrads, academic advisors usually update or approve a change of major themselves, and they determine the effective date. For grad students, they don't really change majors. They apply for admission again, basically, but the grad college usually processes those. But in the system, the person inputting the update can choose an effective date, and they can backdate or future date. If a term has already started and the student still needs to register for classes that have prereqs, or the college needs them to be charged the college program fees, they have to backdate it when they do the major change. They have to date it to the first day of the term. If they want the change to be effective for the upcoming term, they just use the current date usually. But both of those things, prereqs and tuition and fees, are driven by the effective date that they choose, which is the main reason why for enrollment reporting, we use the major that's effective as of the term start rather than as of today's date. I said they can backdate, and they do all the time. They know exactly what it's going to trigger when they use a backdate. This is an example where in student profile, you can see the action date was January 31st, and they backdated it to January 5th, which was the term start for the example here. Okay, primary record flags. I mentioned that a lot of students have multiple plans, subplans, programs, careers. In student profile, we have 4 columns. One is just the primary record flag. If you set that to Y, you'll get 1 record per student per term. We also have the primary career, primary program, and primary plan flags. The primary record flag is a Y whenever the other 3 columns are also a Y. A student can have multiple primary programs if they're on different careers. So a student who is both grad and law can have a primary program for grad and a primary program for law. That's what we use the primary career for, though, to select the primary career, which then sets the primary record flag for that student. The primary plan flag is pretty easy to understand. It's difficult to explain quickly how it's coded. But basically, when a student has multiple plan codes on the same program plan stack, the most major of those codes is the primary plan. The best example is some of them that we're looking at right here. The student has a major and a minor. The major is the most major. That's the primary. If they have a major and a certificate, the major is primary. If they have a certificate and a minor, the certificate is primary. So there's a plan type that gets stored for every academic plan in PeopleSoft, and we use that to identify the primary. Every once in a while, there's data errors and students have two different plan codes of the same type on the same career number, which is a no-no, but PeopleSoft lets you do it. So until we fix it, we have some logic that just picks one of the two to make it primary. So anytime you want one record per student per term, just use the primary record flag. If you want primary in your college, you would filter to your college and the primary plan for that career number. Oh, the table also has residency. There's really nothing else to say about it. That table is not effective dated, it's effective termed, and they don't get a record for every term. So this table rolls forward whatever the latest record was for that student in that career. We put the expected graduation term in here. If the student has applied to graduate, you can tell when they're graduating. Students don't graduate until they don't apply to graduate until their last semester at ASU. So up until then, you'll see just a dash. We usually join student profile major by term to student profile by term. This slide is wrong. I need to take out the word major. The student profile by term is the one that has one record per student per term. It has the athlete flag. It has the Barrett Honors student flag. It has all sorts of flags like that. And that's also where we go to get how many total state-funded units that student is in. The third table is the student profile major current. This is the table that has no term-related information in it at all. It's basically their career program and plan. It's as of today's date. It's active students only. This table does include the non-credit career, also known as global launch, but you can't use it to get enrollment status. You would have to use this table and join it to something else to get enrollment status for a particular term. It has much fewer fields in it, but it does have all the fields in the other that were in the other table that are about the program and plan. So all these fields that I showed you are used by my office to run daily and weekly enrollment reports that are on the Enrollment and Records Analytics site. They get distributed to enrollment management every week, to the deans and associate deans. We use it for all of those reports. The reports are available in analytics for anyone to run whenever they want. But some of the reports we do are term comparison, comparing where we are today with where we were in the same point in time last year. And so these are the snapshot tables. There's a really good description about them on the Google Doc. I don't know how many times I said that today, sorry. But it describes how and when those are snapshot. But these 5 sets of tables are what we use in the Alteryx workflow that then feeds the weekly comparison, which is an AUDB. And Chris on my team is doing a training presentation about it tomorrow, about the Alteryx workflow. This just shows you basically, we don't compare, what is today's date? November 13th? We don't compare November 13th with November 13th. We first pick the first day of the term for each of the semesters, and then we back up to it. So right now, I don't know how many weeks out we are. We're like 10, maybe something, 12 weeks out from the start of spring. And then whatever day of the week was a Wednesday that day, that semester is the point in term comparison. The reason we do that is because the first day of the term lines up with the 21st day, which is the census, and everything drives behind the census. So that's the whole reason for that. So in the snapshots, we have these fields called the week number and the day number. And when we do our enrollment comparison, we are using the same week number or day number for all of the terms. You can go back 10 years, you can go back just the last two, whatever you want to do, but that's why the tables are built the way they are. One thing I forgot to mention when I was on the slide about new, returning, continuing is that we have career primacy rules that ASU agreed on. We've been using all this time. Until now, it's been law is always primary. If a student is active in law and anything else, law is always primary. Then grad, then undergrad, but with medical school, that's going to be primary over everything else. Those students will be concurrently enrolled in medical school and grad school in a master's program. So on all of the reports, they're going to be counted as medical school students, not engineering. If anyone's in here from engineering, I'm sorry. So I have plenty of time. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. I think the question is if an undergraduate has more than one major, how are we identifying the primary flag? That's the simplest one. Mhm. Okay, so the question is, should you use the career number or the enrolled flag? The enrollment can only be attributed to a career. It's not any more granular than that. So when a student enrolls, they enroll in a career. They're not enrolling in a plan or a program. So if a student is enrolled and they have 2 or 3 majors, they're going to show enrolled on all of them. And if they're not enrolled, it'll say not enrolled. So it's not the enrollment flag. In student profile, there is a primary career number column, and that tells you what career number they were term activated for. And the term activation is what drives all sorts of things behind the scenes. The enrollment engine will use the primary career number to determine the maximum credit hours that student could possibly register for, because each college is different. It's also used for tuition and fee calculation. So the primary program flag already has all of that logic baked in. It's already figured all of that out. But if you want to analyze it and understand what it means, compare the student car number with the primary student car number in the table, and you'll see which one is primary for each career. Does that answer it? Okay, thank you. I'll start at the left. Okay, the question is for students that have multiple programs and plans, what is the logic? For multiple programs in the same career, it's the career number that I was just describing that comes from student car term. Student car term holds that primary career number for that term, and that drives the enrollment engine, that drives enrollment requirements, tuition and fees and everything. So we use the same thing. So whatever is in student car term is the primary program. Now on the program, they can have multiple plans. When there's multiple plans, they should only have one major per career number. If they don't, it's a data error. But the major MAJ plan type is the primary. After that is certificate, and after that is a minor. Non-degree is always last, non-degree plan type. If the student erroneously ends up being in two plan codes that are both majors, for example, we just pick alphabetical order until we get the data cleaned up. And then I think you had a question. It's more about financial reasons. There's financial aid reasons why medical school needs to be primary. And there's actually set up in PeopleSoft for defining the career primacy, and medical school is going to be primary. We've had lots of discussions with the financial aid and scholarship team, going over what the requirements are for them to be able to award and disperse aid. So that's one of the reasons. I don't know that anyone ever said that a MD is superior over an MS or MSE, but it's more just transactionally what we need. And so for those reasons, we need medical school to be primary. I heard there might be, well, I shouldn't go into that. Stuff is changing every day. You want to go next?
Backing a little bit. I have a case where I want to find students, let's say undergrad students that are enrolled fall, that are eligible to enroll, right? Including students who have applied to graduate. Is it sufficient to just use students profile? I need table, or do I need to go the degree more granular about it?
I would, okay, so the question was if you want to get students that are enrolled in the current term and are eligible to enroll for next term, can you just use two instances of the same table? You can. There could be timing. A student could have applied to graduate and we haven't flipped their flag to N yet. So depending on how critical it is that you're 100% correct and you don't need to worry about it catching up the next day, I would do just that. The eligible to enroll flag being Y doesn't necessarily mean there's no other barriers to enrollment. They could have service indicators that block enrollment. They could have a delinquent account. They could have other things they need to take care of. But if that flag is N, they definitely can't register. So I would use that to easily get rid of all of the students who definitely can't. Thanks. Someone, yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find a slide that has it on there. There it is. Okay. The question was, can we use the dual career flag? That is supposed to be flagged, yes, if they're undergrad and grad in the same term, grad and law in the same term. It's not multiple programs. There is another field, joint program approved. The grad college used to keep that updated, but I'm not sure if they do or what the business rules are anymore. It's a delivered field in PeopleSoft. We pull it in. I would probably need to brush up on my understanding of what that's used for now. right. Any other questions? If not, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. This is my contact information. urtech@asu.edu is the RegTech team in the registrar's office. So if you have any questions, you can post them in Where's That Data, or if you have a detailed question, send it to URTech, or you can contact me. And last is, if you have a minute, please do my 2-question survey. I'd appreciate your feedback. Thanks very much.